Good morning, everyone. My name is Berl Antoniette Sarsale from Group 4, the first reporter to tackle about the medieval period. In medieval period, there are five topics to be tackled: the early Christian art, Byzantine art, Romanesque art, Gothic art, music of the Middle Ages. But before we proceed to the discussion, in these lessons, the student will able to know the medieval period in European past history, largely about the religion, to better understand the concept and representation of arts, as well as to determine the evolution of arts in medieval period up until in the present times. Medieval period in European history started from the fall of Western Roman Empire in the 5th century of Renaissance. So, here comes the early Christian art. Early Christian art, also called Paleo-Christian art or the primitive Christian art, architecture, painting, and sculpture from the beginnings of Christianity until about the early 6th century. In early Christian art, their architecture, paintings, and sculptures are being made and crafted in a religious manner, which derive from Roman art using pagan motifs. This art was styled to suit the spirituality of the religion. Now, the Christian religion was part of the general trend in the late Roman Empire toward mysticism and spirituality. At the time, at those times, artists choose to reject the ideals of perfection and expressing beauty in form and technique. They rather sought to represent images which pointed its spiritual significance. So in early Christian art, it only matters to them the representation of mysticism and spirituality that are used to depict the Christian faith. The earliest identifiably Christian art consists of few 2nd century wall and ceiling paintings in the Roman catacombs. So, underground burial chambers. So when we see catacombs, it is the underground burial chambers. Catacomb frescoes is widely known as the underground cemetery. So this underground cemetery consists of an art gallery which the walls and the ceilings are full of paintings. Christ is placed as the predominant character in catacomb. It symbolizes the love of Christ and the representation of Good Shepherd. Examples are the good doings like Jesus touches the eyes of blind man or raises Lazarus from the tomb, and Jesus multiples bread or changes water into a wine. So the early Christian art refers to the art and the architecture produced for the Christian empire under the rule of Constantine the Great. Christianity was illegal under the Constantine implemented the Edict of Milan. But before Christianity was legal, believers had to worship in secret. They used underground tunnel system called catacomb, which also used to bury the dead. So, in that sense, catacomb was built um, to to hide their worship and the body of Christians at the time because Christianity was illegal in the Constantine Empire. Now, so these are the picture which is called catacomb. So as you can see in the first picture, they are the art shows that the picture of Jesus and also the symbols which represent the spirituality in the faith of the people. And yeah, as you can see, it is so amazing. So early Christian art, early Christian churches in the West and the East. So mo ni ang time pag-build ng mga churches. Early Christian architecture flourished throughout the Roman Empire on a monumental scale. Buildings were of two types: the Longitudinal ni the Basilica in the west, the centralized building, a baptistry or the mausoleum in the east. So muna siya. After ni Nisi, pagka-fall ni Constantine Empire, which is the church, the altar, and the mosaic. So, money ang design sa mosaic. So next is the Byzantine art. The Roman Empire split into the Eastern and Western empires after Constantine died. So, Justinian took the throne of the Eastern Empire. So, si Justinian na ang nipuli kang Constantine. This is referred to as the Golden Age of Byzantine. Why? Because Justinian made Christianity legal in the communities. So, munang gitawag na siya the Golden Age of Byzantine because Byzantine art features a great deal of symbolism and is far more decorative in detail than the early Christian art. So, why? Because the people at the time has the freedom to build churches freely being um, without being kanang gikontra sila sa government because it is already legal. So, mo na to na time nga panindutay na gid sila og mga churches. So, morning example sa time ni Justinian na nag-build na sila og church, which is the San Vital. So, morning exterior design. Ang exterior design is plain and makita lang nimo mga bricks. But the inside, makita nimo ang kaninduton niya and the arts that being made inside the San Vital. So, as you can see, in the San Vital during this Justinian reign, the church of the San Vital was constructed. Many mosaics adorned the walls of this church. Mosaic are brightly colored pieces of glass that were applied to the walls. The sunlight from the windows hit the mosaic, and the walls would shimmer as the light bounces off the glass. The exterior is built of plain brick, which is the opposite of the elaborate decor you will find inside. So we can easily determine what is Byzantine art through the churches. So as you can see, kung mulong ta Byzantine art, the exterior design of the church outside is plain brick. Only plain lang gid siya. But the inside, dito na din nato makita ang representations of the faith and the spirituality of the people. So, through forms, arts, and beauty. Sunod is the Hagia Sophia, Constantinople. So, considered the most important building that Justinian has erected. So, mo ni ang in the time ni Justinian, there's a lot of churches were being built, but Hagia Sophia is the most important building Justinian has erected. Hagia Sophia means Church of the Holy Wisdom. Has served as an Eastern Orthodox church, a Islamic mosque and museum. The most striking aspect of this building is its overall dimension and the size of its dome. The most Byzantine churches, the exterior is relatively plain with a lavish interior. So, kanang dako jud daw ning church. So, as you can see, Byzantine art is normally in the exterior outside is plain bricks, but the inside, as you can see, it is very nindot gid siya with forms and techniques. And and that way they express their faith and spirituality through arts. So nindot kay ang sulod daghay windows, and the walls were being made by mosaic, and that's it. That would be all. So the next topic will be tackled Romanesque art, but by my co-reporter. That would be all. Thank you.
Good day everyone, my name is Jed Raymond Tranquilan and I will be discussing about the Romanesque architecture and Gothic art. First discussion will be the Romanesque architecture. Romanesque architecture is an architectural style of medieval Europe characterized by semicircular arcs. There is no consensus for the beginning date of the Romanesque style, but with the proposals ranging from the 6th to 11th century, this later date being the most commonly held. But in the 12th century, it developed into Gothic style marked by pointed arcs. Examples of Romanesque architecture can be found across the continent, making it the first pan-European architectural style. Since Imperial Roman architecture, the Romanesque style in England and Sicily is traditionally referred to as Norman architecture. Romanesque architecture exhibits massive quality, thick walls, round arcs, sturdy piers, groin vaults, large towers, and symmetrical plans. The art of the period was characterized by a vigorous style in both painting and sculpture. Many castles were built during this period, but they are greatly outnumbered by churches. And the most significant are the great abbey churches, which is still standing, more or less complete, and frequently in use. Now, from the second topic about Gothic art was mentioned in the Romanesque architecture. Gothic art was a style of medieval art that developed in northern France out of Romanesque art in the 12th century AD, led by the concurrent development of Gothic architecture. It spread to all of Western Europe and much of Northern, Southern, and Central Europe, never quite effacing more classical style in Italy. The architectural style's definitive feature is the pointed arc, while the definitive feature of Gothic painting and sculpture is naturalism. The enormous quantity of churches built in the Romanesque period was succeeded by the still busier period of Gothic architecture, which partly or entirely rebuilt most Romanesque churches in prosperous areas like England and Portugal.
The medieval period is roughly between the years 500 and 1500 AD and began with the collapse of the Western Roman Empire. It was a time of war and plague, but also the start of widespread literacy. One dominant musical style was Gregorian chant, developed during the 9th and 10th centuries, a form of what we call plain chant. It was named after Pope St. Gregory the Great. Gregorian chant ensembles would sing unaccompanied, usually in monophony, meaning single notes at a time. In the medieval period, the church had a monopoly on the creation of music, and pieces were passed down through word of mouth. Composing anonymously, so you didn't take any credit for your music, was considered an act of devotion to the church. As such, we don't know the names of many composers from this period. One that we do know about is Hildegard of Bingen, a German abbess, mystic, composer, and herbalist. Oddly, we only know about her music through her writings on alternative medicine. She composed 69 musical pieces that we know of, making her one of the most prolific composers from this period. She would travel Germany preaching for reform in the church. Around 1000 AD, we see the development of polyphony, meaning more than one note played simultaneously, including early harmony, counterpoint, and chords. These would become dominant forms in the near future. When we started to write down music, there wasn't always an indication of rhythm or structure, and the spaces between notes didn't always have the strict meaning of pitch that they do now. They were sometimes just approximations of the directions the note should go in. The church developed modes which organized pitches and the distance between them, what we now call intervals. There were also rhythmic modes developed by composers at the Notre Dame School of Polyphony in Paris. A lot of medieval music was written in triplet time, like the modern-day waltz. This is by no means a rarity, but is interesting considering the dominant time signature is now 4/4. The 3/4 signature is most likely a derivative of the Holy Trinity. One common misconception is that all music from this period was written by the church or the monarchy. These institutions were able to keep their music safe from decay, so it's hard to say to what extent the common folk were literate, linguistically or musically. There were many secular musical traditions in the Middle Ages, such as the traveling troubadours in southern Europe and trouveres in France. They would travel Europe with poems and songs about heroic deeds and ballads of courtly love. Guillaume de Marchand is revered as perhaps the greatest musician of the 14th century. He was a musical experimenter and traveling musician. Stories of heroic knights and damsels in distress, far from sacred content. His compositions required a certain singing range, which implies that people were working on their skills as performers in this period. His music contained sections of both singing and spoken word. His music is believed to have inspired writers such as Geoffrey Chaucer. There were a variety of instruments played in the medieval period. Let's take a look at some of these specific instruments in a little more detail. The fiddle hasn't changed a whole lot since the Middle Ages. It developed from the lyra, a 3, 4, or 5-string Byzantine instrument, which was held upright and played with a bow. This evolved into the violin around the 1500s. The guitarn is an ancestor to the guitar, similar to the lute, plucked with a quill with strings made of guts. A modern guitar has an obvious neck and body, but it was harder to tell where one started and the other began on a guitarn. The dulcimer is a string instrument, played by striking the string with small hammers. There are examples of these from all over the world, including Mesopotamia. Trumpets had no valves and very limited notes. They could be used in battle to send commands to soldiers over long distances and to cut through the cacophony of war. There was also a variety of percussion instruments in the medieval period, which generated sound by being hit, like tambourines and drums.